Hi, I'm Christine, an intern from Grand Canyon University, here with Dawn Institute. Welcome to Therapy Thursdays. We get a lot of clients calling and asking about EMDR therapy. It tends to be a type of trauma therapy that everybody seems to know, that acronym. And although there are a lot of trauma modalities out there, EMDR is one of them. In order to use this modality, you do need to be trained from an EMDR specialist. So I would make sure if you're looking for EMDR therapy that they have gone through the appropriate training. So let's dive in. What is EMDR? The EMDR stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. What in the heck does all of that mean? Okay, let's break that down. Some of us know that when we go to sleep at night, we have REM sleep, that rapid eye movement. EMDR mimics that in a piece. What that does is it kind of ties in the two parts of our brain and allows us to desensitize triggers and then reprocess those triggers. So here is kind of an analogy that I like to use with a lot of my clients when I'm explaining EMDR. First of all, I'm not quite sure if you can see this cut out right here. Here's a picture of Riley from the Disney movie Inside Out. And anybody that's seen this movie knows that when Riley goes to sleep, all of her thoughts and her emotions that are in her head go through and they start acting out. They're kind of going through those memories and working through them. That's kind of what happens when we go to sleep and some of what happens when we go into REM sleep. So if we're looking at Riley here, and she's getting ready to go to bed, when we do REM sleep, that's our deep sleep, that is what we're trying to mimic, like I said, in EMDR. So how do we break this down when we're doing EMDR therapy? First of all, imagine this is a bookshelf over here on this one side. Throughout the day, throughout our weeks, throughout our history, we've had lots of thoughts and emotions and experiences that happen to us. When we sleep, our brain tries to process some of those things. And when we get into this REM sleep, we try to take these thoughts and emotions and we try to put them nicely on a shelf for our brain to process. And for the most part, all of these things should fit really nicely on the shelf. Occasionally, though, we get a big thought, a big emotion, a big experience that's too big for the brain to fit it nicely on that shelf. And so the brain's like, no, we need to leave it here. And I'm going to leave it here. Well, sometimes that can give us this anxiety or this trigger of something too big. What we do through EMDR is we try to target these things that our brain hasn't processed yet. We try to break it down into smaller bits and pieces, and we use, instead of REM, we use what's called bilateral stimulation. And we try to mimic what happened here in the therapy room. We try to break down this big thought or emotion that's just not going nicely on the shelf. We pick an item here, and then we take it, process it, and put it nicely on the shelf. So how does that look in a session? First of all, and as I said before, you're going to want to have an EMDR trained therapist to work with you on this. The second of all is that we've got to figure out how to get the bilateral stimulation. And there's a number of ways to do it. Back in the beginning of EMDR, when it was first coined by Shapiro, she would use the eye movement and she would use her fingers. And as the client, with your eyes open, you would then follow the therapist's fingers as you're doing the processing through EMDR. They have found through tons of research that you don't necessarily have to have that eye movement, but what you need to have is bilateral stimulation. Remember, our brains are almost kind of broken into two halves. You've got your left and you've got your right. And what we're doing is stimulating one side and then the other, and then the other, one side and then the other, so they start talking to each other. You start thinking about this memory and you start processing through in order to get it desensitized and then reprocessed. So we can use those finger movements. We also can use the butterfly effect, where we have clients sit like this and we go through the reprocessing and you can hit each side. There's another way. We can use what we call, just in short, this would be called buzzies. These buzzies are just tappers. The therapist is the one that controls this side and the client just sits and holds these. And they just vibrate very similar to what a phone vibration hits. So it'll vibrate on one side and then the other, one side and the other. And what that helps to do is allow the brain to recommunicate, to stimulate both sides, and to reprocess those troubling memories. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We do have some Dawn therapists that are EMDR trained. Again, thanks for being part of the Dawn difference.